I made an earlier video about the question what China wants, because I think that's becoming more relevant right now. And I got a reply by a person named Thomas, Chinese. And the Economist also has a front page which says how China sees the world. I read the Economist article, but of course it's the Economist. It's the politically correct Western view of things. It doesn't really acknowledge global warming that much, and so it's always it's a political document. And in that document I read a couple of things that I can combine into, let's say, the aggressive hypothesis. Maybe I should wake up China as the aggressor, let's say. And in an article in The Economist it says that the communists within China are basically expressing frustration towards the West. And well, that's not a big surprise, because if you're a communist in China, then you have seen your constituency erode, and one way to get them back is, if they're unhappy, tell them that it's the fault of the Americans or somebody else, and your constituency will grow. So that's easily to debunk. Another aggressive China news item in recent news is the report by the Pentagon that China is developing their defense systems, and that they're trying to develop disruptive technology. And that in words it's also kind of, it sounds like a warning, but it's, to me, I read it a little bit, and it doesn't really seem that unnatural that China, with a growth of 10% or more in the last decade per year, would not modernize its army and would not increase spending in their army. And of course their spending has increased more than their economic growth. Well, that's not a reason to be afraid of them. And the American report says that China is actually focusing on smaller scale, more flexible teams that can move around on the border. So it's not that strange to me, and it's not really a valid reason to be worried about China in terms of war. And then in The Economist I also read that Mr. Wen was traveling around Europe with a book of Adam Smith in his suitcase, and that Adam Smith is a proponent of social justice, and that Mr. Wen explains it that you should of course make sure that everybody in society benefits from economic growth. So that's not a pro-war stance. That's basically saying if we are China, if we're rising, then we will try to make sure that everybody profits from that. And you know, how more non-aggressive can you consider the years of buying US debt by China? You know, they have basically built the US in the last decade by investing in the US massively. So that's not very aggressive. That's all trade related. Well, Thomas also writes that's a very natural thing for China. China doesn't, a Chinese person, or he at least, doesn't think in terms of conflict. He thinks in terms of trying to grow peacefully. And that he says that China has been a great nation in the past. It has been all over the world with big ships, and it would like to have that position restored. But it doesn't. It has never, or very much, or never been as aggressive as the US have been in the last 8 years. I guess I would be interested. His description, Thomas's description of the media in China, is that they don't really talk about Western media or what's said in the West. They're talking a little bit about social justice, about corruption, and those kind of things. But they're not trying to fire up some kind of anti-Western sentiment at all. While the words of Mr. Wen in The Economist are twisted by the writer as to mean that they're directed first of all towards an internal public, which is unlikely, and second of all to be not true, so disingenuous, which he would never do, of course, with anything coming out of Barack Obama. So it's a continuing question.